Alrighty. So starting with your hips. So in considering the core and what's entailed in your core, your psoas muscle, which allows you to do to help facilitate the lift of your leg or the doing a crunch. It's really deep to your organs. So in other words, it's behind your organs, and it emerges and attaches to the inside of your femur. And then it's associated, sometimes it's called iliopsoas, because the iliacus lines the pelvic bowl and it comes in, it joins that same attachment. So psoas goes up underneath your kidney in the back and comes through and joins up with the iliacus, which comes a little bit more in from the sides, and they both attach right here in the front of your hip crease, the front lower hip crease. So when I'm doing this circling, I am giving the iliopsoas a chance to open up. So of course it shortens when we're sitting all the time. So when I have my hands on my sacrum, and if I just kind of press my sacrum forward a little bit, I might notice a little connection here, a little stretch at the inside of the femur, the groin area. Just asking the iliopsoas area to open up a little bit more. So you don't want to push so hard that you feel back pain, like your back is not ready for that yet. But just enough of a push to ask for this hip crease to really expand open. And then, in going back, you let that sacrum open up to the back. And then when you circle the other way, of course, that can be, depending on what's going on with you, it can be really different to go in the other direction. You're coming at, maybe a tighter psoas from a different direction. So you want to kind of notice that. I could feel that my right psoas is a little tighter than my left. So I'm just being a little careful as I go around to the front, making sure I'm considering its tightness. All right, and then I'm gonna bring my feet together. And first go to my transverses kind of goes, you're just thinking this is like nice little sling from your hip bone to your hip bone. And if I just draw up a little bit on that sling so that I open up all the tissue around my sacrum and I open up my low back. That way I don't impact my knees too much and I circle. So for me, as I have a good natural anterior tilt that I have to work with. When I do this exercise, really focusing on opening up my low back and turning, when I turn my knees, I can feel the stretch around each SI joint. So for me, this is still a back stretch more than anything. So I feel the back stretch, and I'm also bending and opening my knees slightly, which is rotating my ankles and stimulating the bottoms of my feet. So I want it to feel good. I want it to feel like a nice stretch to my back and not a heavy impact on my knees. So you have to really kind of watch your core so that if the back is kind of a little bit tight and lifted, your tailbone's lifted towards the ceiling more, then you're going to get more impact on your knees. So you don't want that. Turn the other way. You want to stretch the back and take the pressure off the knees. All right, and coming back. Before we go up, leaning on your front thigh, just placing my hands right under the hip crease and leaning my torso and just putting a little weight on that foot and then circle the ankle. And then circle the other way. Okay, and then we're gonna go the other way. Lean on the thigh and just toe down and circle the ankle. The cooler the weather gets, the more you circle the other way. You want to make sure you're attending to your ankles, the distal areas. Okay, and now we'll go up to the shoulders. So I think we're getting like 50 at night, or 50s anyway. And that is different from what our bodies were experiencing a week or two ago. So it's a big change for your connective tissue. And circle the other way. Okay, and then lift the crown, ear to the shoulder, then drop the nose forward. Then ear to the shoulder and drop the nose forward. And then you can turn out your opposite hand. So I'm just taking a little bit more time here as I sense that I need a little bit more warm up. Of course, if you're someplace really warm, you might not need any of this extra time. Okay, so we're going to do our little roll down from the bottom. So I'm going to drop my tailbone, sit just this is the feeling. It's like when you're trying to get yourself to not impact your knees, but to open your back. When you drop your tailbone, you want to feel like your legs are almost you can feel the resistance of the spring. Like I want to sit down, but my legs won't quite let me fully sit down. So I'm sitting with my back, but I'm not collapsing into my knees. So there's a resistance in that spring. So I can still work the back, but not give in to the knees, which will not work my back. So I'm rooting my tailbone. I'm not tucking it under because that's not going to get me the right effect, nor am I sticking the tailbone out. I really want to have my sacrum sort of flat. If I put it up against the wall, I could just feel the center of the sacrum, against the wall. I want to feel that kind of flat feeling. And then, keep the tailbone rooted. That is, if somebody were holding a string at your tailbone and holding it down so that when you bent, you could bend without lifting your pelvis away. Okay, so the tailbone is rooted. And then I'm going to roll around. So I can put my fingers right in my dantian and just ask for a bend around my fingers. So I feel that there's a change above my right above my sacrum, the S1. And then the L5, the lowest lumbar, and then the L4, the next one above that, and the L3, the one above that. And as you get up to L2 and L1, you're really getting up to the thorax. So you don't have to try as hard there because the thorax already bends forward, and we don't want to bend it forward more. We don't want to crush the heart and lungs. So we just let that low back get a stretch. And if I let my arms go, my hands should be at or above my knees. Okay, so I'm really just stretching this lower back. And as I'm here, I'm going to feel the arc of my spine lengthening through my crown, and then my armpits just getting a little bit wider, so that I'm still expanding the spine. It's just that I'm expanding the lower spine, and then I'm lifting and opening the upper spine. And then as though somebody's pulling my tailbone string down to help me come back up. Okay, we're just getting a nice little low back stretch, and see if you can't stand a little bit taller. So I'm going to sit again as though you're sitting on a very strong spring that won't let you collapse the spring. It just, there's some resistance in the legs as I drop my tailbone, and just lower myself down just ever so slightly. Keep that rooted as you bend around your dantian, and let your low back stretch. L5, L4, L3. Letting your arms open, and they should hang above your knees. And this time you're going to turn your heart left and right, which is a big stretch. If you're doing this without compressing your thorax, you should feel a stretch around your SI joint. Each side of your low back and the sides of your sacrum in the pelvis. So letting yourself turn left and right. And if your SI joint's bothersome, just turn less, or you can just not turn if it's bothering you at all. Okay, so I root down one more time, and I come back up. So the other day I wanted to give people the option of doing this same exercise in the chair. So we're going to do the same exercise in the chair. So the thing is, and for me, I'm anteriorly tilted, and I know it. If I don't loosen up my low back before I start doing core work, then I might hijack my low back over and over again every time I try to engage my core. So I don't want to do that. I'm taking a pillow for this exercise. So you have your chair. If you have a pillow nearby, you can do this without a pillow. It's totally fine. But I'm giving you the option of doing a pillow because I'm going to try to open up my upper thorax after I open up my low back. So I'm tucking the pillow in on my lap, and I'm thinking the same thoughts I was thinking when I was standing. I'm sinking my sits bones towards the ground and keeping my low back kind of flat. And then I'm letting myself articulate around my dantian and my L5, L4, L3. And you can see that the pillow keeps you from, I'll just show you. I can't lift my tailbone and do this. That's not what I want to do. I want to articulate from the low back as I bend. So the pillow being here, taking up that space, can help you to just find that articulation. So I'm not crowding my thorax. I'm just keeping my sits bones on the chair, and I'm letting my low back stretch. And as I come down onto the pillow, there's only so far I can go, so I can't just totally collapse my upper body. And you can just then rest there. The important thing is that you don't bend so far you start lifting your sits bones, because then you're not articulating where we want you to. Just keep your sits bones on the chair and bend into the pillow. And you'll have to play with different pillows. This is a good size pillow, and it's a good softness for me to be able to do what I need to do. So I'm letting that low back open, and let that opening, just feel that, and feel how that feels, hopefully similar to the way that you stretched earlier. And then just root your tailbone and come back up. I'm going to use my core because I'm in a chair and I can't use my legs. So I'm going to draw my my lower dantian in a little bit to bring my body up. All right. So now we're going to counter turn we're going to counterbend the upper thorax. So thorax, generally, the lumbar is going to curve forward, and we're curving them the other way. In a way, we're opening them. And then the thorax bends the other way. So when we forward bend, sometimes we use too much of the upper curve of the thorax. So we're going to counteract that by trying to get the upper curve to open. So I fold, keep my sits bones in the chair, and let my low back L5, L4, L3, L2. And then as I rest my breastbone or my sternum on the pillow, I can then draw my navel in a little bit, open my arms out to the sides a little bit, and then lift, bring my shoulder blades together and down, and let my arms come out to the side. So I'm asking for the upper back to go into extension while the lower back is still in this flexion. Okay, so I'm just letting my arms fly like a little airplane, and then make small circles with your nose, because oftentimes you overuse the neck when you're trying to use the thorax. Okay, and then I'm just going to relax to let my arms come down. You're waking up the thorax. I can put my hands back on the pillow, draw my navel in so I don't overuse my back. I can use my hands and come back up. So the idea is to not just jam right into my low back every time I want to do a movement. I'm trying to teach other parts of my body to engage so that my back doesn't get tight. Okay, so I sit nice and tall, and I'm going to keep my sits bones in the chair. I'm going to articulate just above my sacrum. L5, 4, 3, 2, maybe even 1. But you're going to rest your sternum on the pillow. And of course, this may take you a while to find the right pillow. But I'm not hovering. I don't have to do too much work here. I have the support of the pillow. So I can rest on the pillow and then open my armpits, draw my shoulder blades together and down, and then lift my elbows out, just like we do in the Qigong, oftentimes the arm opening Qigong. And then I can bring the shoulder blades a little bit more together. I'm using my lower core so that I don't lift from my low back. My hands are out to the sides like I'm on a little airplane. Make small circles with your nose so you're not over engaging the cervical. And then last, try to turn your palms upward, like in the same direction as the top of your head. And one more time, draw the shoulder blades together and down. Use a little bit of lower core so you know that you're not using your low back to do this. And then one last time, make circles with your nose. So I'm concentrating the work behind my heart, between my shoulder blades, right in the middle of my thorax. And I'm trying to keep my low back open when I do that. And free my neck. Okay, it's not easy, especially if your thorax is used to not really working. It's not easy. So if I come back and I just kind of put the pillow to the side and I feel like I'm tall. So if it was sitting here at first was a little bit of labor, taking that stronger accent out of the curves and allowing the spine to open up all the way just may make it easier for you to sit in your sits bones, right? So from here, that it might be with this opening of my low back, now I can focus a little bit more on my core. And I'm going to start that by drawing the navel in. Again, this is what this is not. When I draw my navel and I roll to the back of my sits bones, I'm asking transversus to wake up. I'm really just using the lower core muscles, but what I'm trying not to do is let this fall. So you just opened up your thorax. So leave it up. And then roll to the back of your sits bones, but leave the sternum up. And then come back. So this is a little isolation, but it may take you a little bit to get it. Draw the navel in towards the sacrum and rolls ever so slightly to the back of your sits bones, but keep your sternum up. And release. Draw the navel towards the sacrum, roll to the back of your sits bones, but keep your sternum up. That's the hard part. A lot of us can do this. You roll the back of your sits bones and you collapse the upper. In our Tai Chi form, we really don't want to do that. We want to get some articulation and movement. Like this is moving with an independent pelvis. And people that ride know that, learning to ride with an independent seat means that your seat follows the horse, but you don't collapse your whole body every time you move. So we're doing the same thing in Tai Chi. We're trying to be able to get some articulation through the pelvis and the low back without collapsing whatever the upper body is doing. So it's small, but it's, a very deep exercise. I draw my navel towards my sacrum and I roll to the back of my sits bones. And I really just feel this area open without collapsing this. So I could say sternum open, roll to the back of my sits bones. And you'll notice that isolation might take a little more energy from your core. But this is a safer core exercise for most of us because I'm not collapsing the upper as I utilize the muscles of the lower. All right, so once you have that isolation, you can understand that a little bit better. You can do something that's more traditional core, such as putting your hands on the seat and leaning slightly back. You can start with keeping the spine straight, leaning slightly back, using the lower core, and then coming back up. Each time you come back up, try to feel as though you can get just a little bit taller. Again, I am not collapsing the chest. I'm using the lower abdominal muscles. And as soon as you feel that you can do this without futzing with your shoulders and moving your legs around, then you can lean back and you can lift one knee. And then you can lift the other knee ever so slightly, and then come back up. And each time you come back up, imagine you're getting even taller than you were the previous time. So I do it just a slight backward lean, 10 to 15 degrees. Feel that lower core. I don't want to grab with my low back, nor with my sternum. And then I lift one knee. And you can try lifting the knee a little bit higher as long as you keep your pelvis really rooted to the seat. And then come back up. Imagine you're even taller. And you're facilitated. Having your hands behind you will help you not curl your shoulders. A lot of times as soon as we go for a crunch, we start collapsing the upper. And so we're going to try to move away from that. Nice and tall. A straight spine backward lean, 10 to 15 degrees. Lift the knee as high as you're comfortable lifting it. And this time you can expand only if you feel like you can control this. Expand. It's going to work your quad a little bit. Push out through your heel. Bring it back up. Keep your sternum quiet. Put that leg down. Lift the other knee up. Lift it as high as you can without messing up your core balance. Push out through your heel. Lift it back up and lower it back down. And then come back up. So those of you who are doing kicks, you really want to do this because you want to learn how to keep this long and start strengthening your hip flexors in a good way, not a static, this sitting all the time way. Really strengthen them. Okay, so we'll do that one more time. I'm opening up my sternum. I'm using a little bit of lower core so I know where I'm going to be holding my spine when it tilts back. Lift my knee. Push out through my heel. Really push out through your heel. Bring the knee back. And then put it down. Lift the knee as high as you can go. Keep the sternum open. Push out through the heel. Really push. Bring the knee back. And put the leg down. And then bring yourself back up to the sits bones. So of course you guys it's going to be a little harder on your core if you do this lying down. The only thing that you want to be careful if you do this lying down, those of you who do Pilates and stuff, is that you don't hitch your pelvis all around. Every time you pick up your leg, if you're hitching your pelvis or twisting your pelvis, you're not training properly. It's eventually not going to be the best idea. So you can start with, if you're lying down, you can start with dragging your foot along the surface and bringing it back so that you know that you're keeping your pelvis absolutely still. That's the goal. And then you start to pick up and put down and pick up and put down. And then you do more advanced exercises, making sure. So I feel my sits bones when I'm on the chair. I feel my sits bones, so I can feel if they're rocking off, if I'm tearing one off the chair. I don't want that to happen. I want to keep my pelvis as stable and strong as I possibly can. When you're lying down, you feel your back. You have to feel it through your back, whether you're twisting your pelvis. All right, so it doesn't matter how many you do or how big you do them. What matters is that you keep the core still and strong when you do it. What I'm adding to this in the chair is not to collapse. We tend to use the neck and shoulder inappropriately instead of using the core. So by keeping yourself nice and tall and long and leaning back and having your hands behind you and trying to keep the sternum open and using the lower core and lifting as high as you can and going out through your heel and lifting, I can really feel my sits bones and their stability, and I'm feeling into my core and bringing it back. Okay. And for me, the most important part, besides having this strong enough, I mean, just to sit here, I have to have some strength here, is that I want to keep this area open. So let's put so we don't turn this into an entire core class, put the pillow back. I just want to emphasize this. So when I find my sits bones and I articulate at L5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm letting the low back open. I'm not collapsing the upper. That's something you have to train, or retrain. I can rest my sternum on the pillow, but I want to keep my shoulder blades a little together and down. So I open up my armpits, draw the shoulder blades together and down, and then push the elbows out, and then let the hands gradually float up. So you're kind of like in the airplane position. And make sure that you're feeling that you got a little bit of lower core. When I put a weight on myself, I want to have a little bit more lower core to ensure that I don't go to my low back. I want to use my upper back muscles. When I'm in this position, I can circle my nose to make sure I'm not locking my neck. Shoulder blades a little more together and down as I turn my palms upward towards the direction that my crown is now pointing. A little shoulder blade together and down, a little bit of lower core. Let yourself really feel that connection of the space behind your heart working and your lower core working to keep your low back open. And then if you need to use your hands, you can. Otherwise, just use lower core to help you sit back up. And then bring your hands in and down. Okay. So you can do sit-ups till the cows come home, and you might not get one iota of postural change in the direction that you want it to go, because you're using your neck, you're using your thorax, you're closing the upper thorax, and you're not getting a good position for the whole spine. So if I come back out here onto my feet and I just stand and I see, oh, there's a little less effort in my standing because I'm not being pulled down by our standard position in front of the computer, neck forward, thorax back, pelvis off the mat, no core at all. I have a little bit of core to pick my energy up, and a little bit of energy behind my shoulder blades to hold my shoulders out to the sides. And then that I can just free my neck and float it straight up. So I go into my form, I open my armpits, elbows out, and lift through the crown. So I should say that I automatically did this already. I located my tailbone and rooted it into the earth and let my knees soften. and then open my armpits and my elbows. And then I'm feeling the energy between my shoulder blades. And then lifting my wrists right through my crown and turning my palms upward. So that helps you to reverse all this thumb down position that we do. Now it's thumb up and back, and just let yourself feel that. So now make little infinities or little circles with your nose and free your neck of the job of thinking it has to do everything. The neck is free. The core is strong. I push my elbows back and bring my hands in. And we're going to just do this exercise of finding balance from side to side, this time with the thought that I want to stay strong in my core and connected through my shoulder blades and not lose that. So I'm going to drop one hand, bring the other hand. You're going to sit well enough to really feel like you have a little bounce in the legs, a little spring. And I'm going to open up my hip, the hip that I'm turning away from, on the heel of the other foot. And notice right away that what's your first impulse? Your first impulse may be, when you want to go to that foot, because you know that's what we're going to do, that your chin starts to move first. And how many times you do that throughout the day? So what if you carried your neck long and your crown up, and instead you felt the opening, you felt the back foot and the opening of the hip as you shifted your weight to that other foot? And as you slowly pick up your heel, the ability to then, as you pick up your heel, you can move the drop of your tailbone over that one foot. So you're finding vertical, and before you move fully into vertical, you could say, did I lose any horizontal? Did I lose the space under my armpits? And did I start leading with my chin? So go back to your vertical position, down in the tailbone, up through the crown, out through the elbows. And as you pick up your knee, to keep you from losing yourself completely in the vertical and being top heavy, the moment you pick up the toe, just push out wider through your hips and your elbows and your shoulders. Right? And so we're just going to take it right there before we go into the next move. So come back. Because at first we're just trying to figure out, can I keep the position that I just built, which was to open up my back, lengthen my back, strengthen my core, keep my chest open, and keep my arms, that's these fingers and these fingers are connected through the shoulder blades into the core. And if they're operating independently and they're not connected to each other at all, then it's going to be harder for me to stay connected in my whole form. Okay, so I want to work on the central core. I use a little bit of lower core. I'm not doing a crunch. I'm just asking for a little tone here, which will release my back. And when I soften my knees, I feel like there's a little resistance from those legs. Like I want to sit down, but I can't because there's a little push up as I'm pushing down. And that gives you the balanced energy through your legs to keep a healthy spring under you, not a collapse. The moment you collapse, you're asking your joints to carry your weight. If I have a little yin and yang, a little push-pull in my legs, then I'm using the muscular structures and the connective tissue to more appropriately carry me. Okay, so I want to feel like when I drop the tailbone, there's a little push back. I'm trying to push into the floor, but there's a little push back from the floor. There's a little bit of both going on. And then I'm not sitting on my joints. I'm in the tissue, the rubber bands. So then I open up my arms, my armpits, and open up my elbows and feel the width of my shoulders. And then after I've gone out as far as I really physically can, I can draw my shoulder blades a little more together and down to turn my palms over and then keep the energy lifting through my spine. I'm just getting taller and my hands are following that getting taller. And then let yourself stay here for a moment thinking my sacrum is more free because my low back is open, and my sternum is more free in the front because I'm using some energy to hold my arms in one structure through my back. Then when I want to create the roundness forward, I push my elbows back. And this is the trickiest part of all. When your hands come forward, you need to keep the energy between your shoulder blades and not disengage there. So it's like my shoulder blades are still trying to pull together as my hands are moving forward. There's the yin and the yang again. My shoulder blades are trying to come together as my fingers are trying to reach together. Shoulder blades together as my fingers are trying to reach together. And that will keep you from compressing in your sternum. Okay, so I'm really trying to reach with my fingers at the same time I'm bringing the shoulder blades together. When I make this change, I want both hands to move. So I don't lose the connection through my back when I go to hold the vertical ball. And now I'm going to re-engage the connection to the earth and keep that foot that you're going to turn away from really planted as I open up that hip and turn on the other hip and heel. So feel the openness. So when you do this turn, let yourself feel the stretch through your pelvis and your hips, and let that mirror in your shoulders. Feel the shoulders, because now you got this vertical hold. You want to feel the shoulders really opening wide internally. So when I go to lift my heel, I have to give at the hip that's going to receive my body weight and lift my heel. And I start to just gently feel the tailbone find the middle of that foot. So you have a moment here where you can allow your tailbone to drop to the middle of that foot because you still safely have your toe on the ground. Right? So then figure out if your chin went forward in that and just kind of replace your chin. You can make a little circle with your nose, make an infinity, and make sure you're not leading or locking your neck. So you go into your vertical energy to pick up your knee, and the moment that your toes leave the ground, reconnect with the width of your body. Wide shoulders and wide hips, because this will help you keep your roundness, your balance, and the width of your stance. And then step back. Okay, so we're going to do that same thing on the other side. Just bring the hands in and down so we can rebuild the whole package. So there's a sense that I'm not leading. So if you guys play with this, we'll just play with it just because it's fun to do something you haven't done the last few minutes. If I'm leading with my sternum, put your hand on your sacrum and notice what happens with your sacrum. So if I'm pushing my sacrum out, that is also too much energy not in the central channel. So when my sternum goes forward, I start curling my low back and sticking the tailbone out. So I want to kind of bring the sternum and the sacrum to make a connection with this space that I imagine that is my core channel where my spine runs, right? Let them come together. And so I have to find the balance between bringing my tailbone too far under and then sinking. So now my sacrum, if I push it forward, where I've got too much opening at the hip creases, and I'm really sending that sacrum really and the tailbone under, then the sternum will fall back. So I have to find the right balance between the sternum and the sacrum, right? This going forward is going to send the other back. This going to sunken is going to send the sacrum too far under. So I have to find the balance between the two. Somewhere in the middle where both bones flatly hold onto this vertical space. Okay, and then that little bit of bend into the legs being met by a pushback from the earth. pushing into the earth, and I feel the pushback from the earth. Now I'm in tissue instead of hanging out on joints. Okay, sacrum and sternum hugging the core channel. Armpits opening, elbows opening. You're opening out with. And there's a point at which if you kept trying to go, your elbows would go up and your shoulders would go up. So you don't do that. You go out, and then you bring your shoulder blades together and down and turn your palms out. And then you get taller in your spine. And when you get taller in your spine, that keeps your arms light, and your arms come up because of the internal energy moving up. And then just let yourself have this for a moment, where the fronts of your shoulders are open, and you can play with moving your neck. You're not grabbing at your neck muscles because you brought your arms into motion, and your sacrum and your sternum are hugging that core channel. And now as you push your elbows back and you bring energy between the shoulder blades, you want to keep that energy as you reach your fingertips forward. So it's like your scapula are trying to come together as your fingers are trying to come together. My scapula are moving apart to bring my hands together, but it's with this eccentric energy. The muscles in between them are working. Okay, so now the trick is you have two hands doing a different thing. One hand is going to go down. You feel the muscles kind of below in the lower scapula, and then pushing out through the upper elbow so that you keep the roundness, and you turn your palm downward. Now you have the vertical shape. And now you're going to engage the energy of the foot in the floor, and then go up to the hip and open the hip as you turn on the other hip. Really big. That to me is a really wide opening of my hip joints. And as I let my sacrum just kind of magically and energetically go find the middle of that foot, and I peel up the heel of the other foot, I'm allowing it to descend to one foot. Okay, so I have that shoulder blades together and down, elbows out, fingers in, crown is up, not locking the cervicals, sternum and sacrum hugging the core channel. And then I can use a little bit more tailbone down, crown point up to help with that vertical. And the moment I have that vertical and the toe comes off the ground, I go back to width of shoulders and hips so that I can keep my balance. Okay, so I come back and release that energy. Bring the hands in and down. There's a lot going on, isn't there? But after we get into a rote exercise where you've learned the movements, your work is to go backwards and correct your postural issues and the things that are keeping the energy from being clearer and cleaner. You're using the form and what you know to go deeper into your body. Okay, so we're going to do it one more time on the other side, and then we're going to continue this time into the full movement. Okay, so when you're engaging the floor, you're opening your tailbone, you feel like you're pushing into the earth is pushing back. So you're not collapsing in your knees. There's energy there. Push and pull. Okay, my sacrum is around the core channel as well as my sternum. I open up my armpits and my elbows. You go out as far as you can, then to shoulder blades together and down, which deepens in your kidneys. Turn the palms up, and then lengthen through your core channel, the vertical, so your hands can float up. Let your shoulders get used to this position. Let your neck release. Push your elbows back. Keep the energy between your shoulder blades as your fingertips come together. Really tough. So that's how I keep out of my pecs, overusing the pecs in the front of my shoulders. I keep using my back. And then I make the change, noticing that now one half and the other half of my upper back are doing something slightly different. Engage the floor with the one foot and open up the hip, receiving on the other hip and foot. Feel the width of your shoulders, your hips, your elbows, and then begin to peel the heel off the ground, transferring the weight. Just let the weight of your tailbone find the middle of that standing foot. Okay, and then stretch a little bit more on the vertical to help you pick up the leg. And the moment you pick it up, go into width of hips and shoulders and elbows. And now depth. So as I step forward, I want my low back to open a little bit more so that I can carry my foot in hand. And then release from the back leg to the front leg. And push. And let the spine get longer to stop the forward. I go back into vertical, let the energy change, and then depth. I open up the kidney, bring the hands back. I stop where my front hand is at my now turned to the diagonal midline. And then I go back up to vertical to change the energy because I don't want to keep going back. I want to change the energy. A little width and now some depth. And as I shift, I feel the vertical to stop the forward energy. I feel a little width through my elbows, out and up, vertical, down, and then to prepare to go forward, depth. I just let myself elongate. So this is the roll down from your tailbone through the L4, L5, etc. You want to open up the back, to send the hands forward. Keep the elbows a little wide. Lift the heart. So here's your vertical. And again, connect with your width so that you stop the forward motion. And then go back into your height to let your hand drop. This is all subtle. It's all happening inside my spine. Open up the front hip, receive on the back hip. Turn, you slowly peel up your foot. Think vertical, so I'm getting long in my spine before I do the lift. And then when I do the lift, I go back to pushing out through my elbows and shoulders and keeping my hips wide so I can maintain the balance. Open the low back, there's depth there. Come back to the beginning. This is when, we'll just take a little rest here. We're going to rebuild the posture and do the other side. When you see somebody, because I used to go to Jane's workshop and, we'd go a half-hour slow set to a 45-minute slow set, and it'd be a 45-minute slow set or a 50-minute slow set would really feel slow. And there were people that were doing hour-and-a-half slow sets. And you're like, what the heck, when you've only been doing the form for a couple of years, you think, what the hell are they doing with all that time? When you start to study at this level, you're like, oh, that's what they're doing with all that time. There's a lot when you start to study what your body already has figured out how to do without you operating it. That fact that you can walk across the room when you get up in the morning and go make your coffee. There's a lot of balance, counterbalance that's going on inside your body mind that it's below your conscious awareness. You're making that conscious again, especially to the point of trying to make changes to your unconscious that has come to not working for you. Injuries are automatic movements that we've done over years that are no longer working. So we make it conscious again so that we can improve the movement. So again, I engage the floor. And those of us who have been doing Tai Chi a long time, we've also created a lot of mistakes in our Tai Chi. So this is one of them. When I'm pushing into the floor and the floor is pushing back, I'm not in my joints, I'm in the tissue. And the tissue has bounce and give and resilience, whereas dropping into my knees doesn't. It just drains the tissue around the ligaments in my knees. So I'm sitting with resistance. It's like I'm trying to sit. It's like trying to sit in, really buoyant seawater. Usually you're trying to find the bottom, but you can't quite find the bottom. There's buoyancy to it. So I open up my armpits and my elbows, and I get to a certain point and I can't go out anymore. So I roll the shoulder blades together and down. That connects my energy into my kidneys, into my sacrum, into the ground again. And then from there, I can lift up through my core. And I can push my elbows back and bring my hands in. So again, this is the part that you have to have some push-pull. I'm pulling together energetically in my shoulder blades, even though they're physically moving apart. I'm keeping the energy there so that I keep the buoyancy. And then change. It's like you're forming this ball without losing the connection of the buoyancy and the openness. I find the foot to the hip. I open the hip and turn. Feel the width. So I just created more width through my hips, my shoulders, my elbows. But then when I go to peel my heel up, making sure that I find my vertical again is another way to check whether or not you led with your chin. So you can circle your head and make sure you're not leading with your chin. Find your vertical, lift, drop your tailbone, lift the crown, feel the vertical energy until you pick up that toe finally, and then just make sure you have enough horizontal energy or width. As soon as your hand and foot goes forward, you're moving into your depth, opening up your back. And then as you step, you're releasing through the back hip, joining with the front, and opening the back hip so that you can turn, lift, and pull back. And pull back is going to be depth again. It's my kidneys opening against my hands operating. And I change that energy a little bit through my vertical and then my width. So I have my roundness again, and then my depth for the push. And then rise up through your vertical and out into your width. And then height again as you get to the back, and then drop down through that vertical. Feel your width, expand, open your kidneys, depth, height. Connect with your width at the end so that you stop moving forward. And then crown, let your fingertips drop away from that in the vertical. A little width as you turn so you don't lose that, because I'm moving across the horizon. My hips are getting wider. I want to get wide above as well. Peel the foot, heart to toe, chin in, tailbone down, find that vertical, and then reconnect with the width so that you keep your balance. And then this is depth. As you put your foot down, this a little forward back energy, and then turn back. So just come back. There's a lot of detail. It's a lot of detail. Just noticing the energy, these two flat bones, your sternum that covers your heart, part of your heart, and your sacrum, that these almost like they're two magnets that are connected into your core channel. So they're not stuck, but they're floating over that channel. They're not stuck forward and back or back and forward. They're really just connected. Okay. Just want to see where we're at because, yeah, we got 3 minutes. So I'm not going to do the 4 corners. We're just going to do this one more time, this time with just a little bit more flow, just to allow your body mind to integrate what the new information or whatever piece of it you got into your form. So, letting go of doing things perfectly, but just feeling something just come in. You might have opened something, and this is how I experience cranial work. Sometimes something opens and it just automatically fixes. You have to leave room for like fixes that your nervous system knows how to do. Okay, so I feel this push-pull from my roots. And then I open up my armpits. You just feel the width of my body. Shoulder blades together and down. I connect to the earth through the lower tips of my scapula, and I float up to my crown. And then I open back. And for me, I do open up the kidney space to let the elbows go back. And then a little resistance, like the fingers trying to come together, but they can't quite, so that the life stays behind the heart. Feel the change. Open the hip. Find your vertical, lift your heel. Find your width, find your balance, find your depth. So that's tricky, right? The energy's just changed on one foot. Ward off. Turn. Pull back, depth. Height. Width. Depth. Height. Here you go wide, out, and then up, and then down. Depth. Height. Width to keep you from going further forward. Drop from your crown back to the vertical. Let the hand drop. Width, feel the front hip open. Keep your knee with your toe. Heart to the back toe. Before you lift your leg, find your height. So stretch your spine before you lift your foot. And then immediately into width so that you keep your balance. And then step. And we're going to just go to the other side. Turn. Open your hip. Go find your vertical. Peel your heel. Crown over tail. Just let your tailbone drop. You'll notice in the beginning, when you do this, when you first start to figure out how to let your tailbone go, you want to hang on. And so you have this anterior tilt again. But if you really let your tailbone just drop to the foot, it has a weight of its own. And then you can find a little bit more length through your spine to help the internal energy, helping the external lift. And then width immediately, so you keep your balance. And then depth, front to back. Open up your back hip. There's a nice horizontal depth, height, width, depth. Feel your width as you're going out. You're breaking somebody apart, and then up, and then down, and then open the kidney, and lift the heart. Find your width so that you don't keep going forward. Find your height so the hand can drop. Open the hip. Peel the foot. Heart to toe. Find your vertical. Find your width. Find your depth. And sink. Okay. So when you move really slowly like that, not only are you very focused on one thing, it's very hard to concentrate on other things that you might have going on in your day. You really have to be with your body, and that's the point, that your body, mind, and spirit united in those moments. But also working that slowly, it's so good for your tissue, because the tissue has a chance to adapt to what your mind's trying to tell it has to do. So there's more of a unity between the flow of your connective tissue, and your legs get really strong. The slower you move, the more power you get in your legs, you build in your legs. So there's a lot of good reasons. If you say, okay, I only have 10 minutes to do Tai Chi, I'm going to do 5 minutes on one side and 5 minutes on the other side, as slowly as I can, studying the places where I want to resist. You'll learn a way more than if you worked for an hour thinking a million other things in your head while you were doing your Tai Chi automatically. Okay, so short periods of time are often better than a long period of time where you're no longer focused. Okay. And my job is to come up with little exercises to keep you there. Okay.